Come on, y'all.
Feeling good, feeling right. Every day, every night.
Come on.
I got joy in my life, in my life.
Oh, yes, I do, yeah.
I used to wake up feeling real stressed. Now I wake up feeling real blessed. I'm in the sunshine and living my best life. There for a minute I was feeling real rough, until I saw that what I had was enough.
Hey.
I didn't know that I could love it
Hello,
this much.
and welcome to the Chasing Joy podcast. And this is Dumpster Fire Friday, my friends.
Oh, you better believe it. Dumpster fire.
You know what they say. Look, can you read? Is it backwards?
No, you can read. When life gives you a dumpster fire, roast marshmallows. You're welcome. Masha and Sveti show up real early today.
Maybe they just do show. You know, it's so much better. You know, we need your feedback. Do you even care to hear Masha and Sveti anymore? I mean, we know there's like 5 people that do. But I don't know if everybody appreciates them, or if they're like, could you just leave it alone already?
Could you just drop it?
If you don't like it, it's really not going anywhere, but we like to ask anyway.
Okay. Well, Stace,
Yeah.
we're going to jump right into this. You messaged me the other day and said, "Did you hear?" And I said, "No. Tell me more." So I'm going to let you share with everyone what you shared with me to make my mouth drop on the floor. And then we will kind of dive into this Dumpster Fire Friday.
Okay. So, man, this world. Okay. So some of you may have heard this. If not, you're welcome. So it says First Baptist Church members must now sign a sexuality oath opposing LGBTQ freedoms. Okay. When we live in a world that is so sensitive and already has like a lot of people have a very bad outlook on the church. This is not, I don't think this is the way to lead with love. So I will kind of read a little bit more about what it's saying, but it says the church, which has long opposed LGBTQ rights in Jacksonville, is now requiring its members to sign an anti-gay pledge to remain in the church. So it says they're calling the sexual revolution a threat to our church. Yes. Is now requiring congregants to sign a statement affirming their opposition to the LGBTQ plus freedoms if they want to remain members. I want to read you what he said. So he said, Lambert said his church was attempting to share God's love with a deeply confused culture. Now, I agree with that. We live in a culture that's completely confused and quite frankly, mentally ill. So for that, I would say, okay, I get it. And then he goes on to say marriage between one man and one woman is the only outlet for sexual expression. These are basic facts of life and they are wonderful. I agree with that. Lambert also explains in the video that many members of the congregation had struggled with their gender and their sexuality issues. It's right that every member agree to such a statement before they join us to receive our care. Nope. Sorry. Let's back this train up.
Okay.
I don't recall Jesus going to the woman in the well and saying, "Excuse me, could you sign this before I care for you? I would need you to read all these terms that come with my conditional love."
Yeah. I think that when you were sharing this with me, my response was, okay, when you join a church, when you become a member at a church, there are some things that you have to sign, which is normal. And in signing these things, you are declaring like your relationship with the Lord. Typically, you'll write out kind of like a brief testimony, and you are either baptized or planning to be baptized in the church. And so it's, gosh, when you say it, it's like, ooh. But
sounds a little culty.
Yeah.
I've actually
Really?
never, truthfully, I've never been an actual member. I would say, except for the church that I helped plant. But I don't think I've ever been a member. So don't be confused. You can go to that church.
Absolutely.
Call it your church.
And you can call it your church. Yeah. Well, because we're the same person, we've never become members at any church ever either. So,
Yeah.
and it's been one of those things that I'm sure that some people that are listening would say, oh, you probably need to what's the phrase that I won't curse this morning. It's too early, poop or get off the pot, right? Like there's another phrase. And so some people would probably say you should commit to that, but it's just something that my husband and I, in terms of our convictions, we just haven't ever signed anything. Okay. Now going back to this particular church though, and what it's asking of its congregation, becoming a member, I am okay with you having your standard within your church. And then you get to decide, you get to say yes or no to said standard. So signing something in that regard to become a member, aligning with the theology in that church is appropriate. However, asking someone to sign this document to be a part of this sexual revolution feels very yucky to me. While I align with this pastor's into what he is saying, like how the world is depraved and they're confused and the enemy has lied to these people to make them believe like, you can live how you want and whatever you want, like it's your truth and that's what you should be able to live and everyone should accept you for that. And that is a lie straight from the pit of hell, because we know that when you live your truth, you aren't actually experiencing true joy. Like you posted that awesome quote by Matthew McConaughey the other day in Joy Revival. And he's talking about when you're chasing happiness, you're never actually going to experience like the end goal. He's like, joy is the goal. And so when you get to choose joy every day in spite of your circumstances, then you get to decide like how you're responding to things. So experiencing the joy of Jesus ultimately goes back to his word, what he's telling us, not what the enemy is telling us, how we're going to experience life and happiness and all of these things. So I see what this pastor is trying to do, the encouragement that he's trying to bring to his congregation. However, I think there's a different way that you could go about doing this and a different way to show love.
Mm-hmm. Well, because basically, in a nutshell, he's kicking you out if you don't do what he says.
Yeah. And
the whole point of all of this is that God gives each and every single one of us the gift of free will. So you don't have to follow God if you choose not to. So when a church comes and says you must do A, B, and C to receive, that is completely contradiction to what the Bible says. Yeah. So I again, like we align with that. And like my church has its mission statement right on its website. And it's very similar to this. Now he doesn't single out the LGBTQ, but he does say, we believe that marriage is between a man and a woman.
Yeah.
And that's fine. You can have your beliefs in your mission statement and they should be a part of your church belief, but it should not be a requirement for you to say yes or no, because here's the thing. Most people that are not saved stepping into that church have a lot of different beliefs than that church. How will they ever come to know the love and the grace and the mercy of Jesus if the first thing they have to do is sign a sheet of paper?
Something. It's yucky.
It's just another form of what? Of division. In the church. The church is they are failing.
It's the church is having, it's 2023 and the church is they're missing the mark in a lot of ways. And like, what does the Bible tell us? It says that like our job is to glorify God while we're here on this earth and to go and make disciples. So in doing so, that means that we ultimately have to be that example of who Jesus is. And we have to live in such a way that we're allowing the Holy Spirit to flow through us so that we can show the love of Jesus to everyone, and we can tell them about God's goodness and his grace and his mercy, and we can find that hope and joy in him. And I think that people that are experiencing confusion and they're questioning and they're trying to figure out, who am I? Which, if you did not listen to the series on identity, which we recently did, I would very much encourage you to go back and do so. One of our more recent episodes with Jay was probably, I think we both said, was like our favorite episode that we ever put out. And ultimately understanding that if our identity comes from Christ, living through our spirit and how we show others love, even if they are living a lifestyle that is a sinful lifestyle, we can still love them and we can find a way to point them to Jesus. Because when you're living a sinful lifestyle, you actually aren't experiencing the true joy that comes from knowing Christ. Because how many times, like as a believer, have you done something and you go, why did I do that? like you don't feel good. Like in the moment, you might be like, oh, this sounds like fun, or I want to do what I want to do. But then afterwards you feel like crap.
Because like when you drink bottle of wine and next day you say, God, I will never drink again if you take this headache away from me, please. Oh God, please take away now. It hurts so bad.
And then 2 weeks later.
Oh, yes. But the remorse is there.
So I think just understanding that in order for us to love others, the church's job should, I think that most churches would say this, that their job is they are trying to pour into their congregation and their community to like hopefully spread the love of Jesus. And it is okay to say, this is what we believe in this church. However, we're glad you're here and we want you to be here. And if you're struggling with things, let's talk about it. Because if you don't know what's happening fully upstairs in trying to figure out, who am I? Am I a man? Am I a woman? Am I fill in the blank? Like going back to like, well, what does God say about you? Like, how were you created? And I think that should ultimately be the goal of the church and of Christians, what we believe. So,
yeah. Well, so I wanted to read the rest. It's just so interesting. So it says, everybody in our culture is fighting about sex, and we want our congregation to be happy and kind. And so we don't want to fight about it. If you could see my face, I don't know about this.
He did not say happy.
And he doesn't want to fight about it. So sign this paper, damn it, or you're out.
What? We want everyone in our congregation to be happy?
Yeah.
Does this man know nothing about the human emotions? Happiness is fleeting.
Yes. Okay, so he says, we don't want to fight about it. And so it's just very helpful to say, here's what we think about it. And if you want to be a part of our congregation, you can sign it. If you don't, that's fine too. So the mission of the church is to love one another and to care for our neighbors and to build, a great, strong community. So how do you do that when you say, no, you're in, you're out? You know what it reminds me of? You guys ever seen the movie Half Baked? This is totally inappropriate for a Christian podcast, but I'm going to say it anyway because it's Dumpster Fire Friday. When he quits his job and he goes up to the microphone and he says, F you, you're cool. F you, I'm out. Like, that's what it reminds me of. We want to build this strong community, but let me tell you, you're not cool. You're not cool. You're not cool.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord. We had a t-shirt saying a while ago that said, or me, yeah, I'm pretty sure I had it on a t-shirt at one point. It said, I'm sorry that the church hurt you. That was man, not God. And we kind of talked about this actually in our identity last one on identity, we were talking about the that other church that was kind of doing similar things with picket signs and telling, God hates gays and all this stuff. And it's just like the enormous repercussions of a mega church at that. This isn't a small church. So this is a large, I think like 27,000.
Okay.
I think is what they said. Which I have my own issues with mega churches in general, but that's for another, that's a great podcast.
That is a great podcast.
Write that down.
Yeah.
Tell my assistant, you go write that down. I forgot my point.
You were just talking about how like the picket signs of saying like, turn and burn type of a thing. Like it's not going to speak to people. Like you're going to drive people the other way. Now, I think that it's important for us to understand you as a believer, somebody who claims to know Jesus, to love Jesus, your job is I would say we've talked about some other things in our jobs, but one of our jobs is to hold other believers accountable. So if you know someone who claims to have a relationship with Jesus and they are actively choosing to live a lifestyle of sin that goes against what the Bible says, and you know this person, it is appropriate for you to approach them and have a discussion with them and figure out what's going on. That is biblical. Now, if you are a Christian and you know someone that is living a lifestyle of sin, but they are not a Christian, that's where you can go to them and ask them questions to try to understand why they have chosen this particular life. And hopefully the prompting of trying to see what's going on and dig a little deeper is going to get them to think, I'm not experiencing joy. Like I say that I just want to be happy, but happiness is going to change every 2 seconds. So I think that there is this fine line because our job is to love, but you don't want to love someone and allow them to live a life that is going to be disastrous and is going to devastate their life and hurt them and potentially hurt others. And I believe that our responsibility is in pointing others to Christ. This currently, like if God has made us for such a time as this, going out into the world, there are dragons and we are going to have to slay the dragons. And so that's not easy. And in doing so, we talked about, this was a while ago, putting on the armor of Christ, and you got to armor up and head out into the world. And sometimes you have to have hard conversations and you're going to be hated because the Bible is very clear about that. They hated Jesus, who was perfect, by the way. They hated him. So if they hated him, a perfect man, of course they're going to hate us. Yeah. It's just part of the job. And so we just have to keep going and investing into these relationships and try to point them to the truth and know that living a life ultimately that is worth living, knowing Jesus is so much better, much better.
Yeah. I mean, and there is a way to love someone who is living this type of lifestyle without affirming them. That's the other issue.
Yes.
Is that we as Christians, I've even seen people write, well, I affirm your decision. Well, that's anti-biblical.
Yes.
And Jesus would not affirm, because then in the same sentence, they'll turn around and say, Jesus would accept you. Yeah. Of course, Jesus accepts everyone, but he says, come as you are. Don't stay as you are. You need to be transformed.
Yeah.
So there's this, again, you're always going to be on this fine line, but the easiest way, if you're in a situation where you have someone that you love dearly in your life that is in the LGBTQ and you don't want to scare them away, just love them. Just love them and show up who you are. Don't be afraid to share your beliefs. You don't need to push them on them. You don't even necessarily need to share them. Just live them out. I have, a dear friend of mine who I've probably asked her to go to church with me like 7 times over our friendship. And I always make it kind of lighthearted. You know me, I always go to humor first. So I will always ask her, and I never pressure her though. I'll just be like, hey, there's something going on this weekend. Maybe you want to check it out. And she'll be like, no, thanks. But she will say to you, like, actually now I've been friends with her for, our kids are 20 years, 20. So 20 years. Wow. We just had a conversation this past weekend, and she was like, well, I've always appreciated the fact that you've never pushed anything on me, and you love me regardless of whether I come to church with you or not. And then we started talking about Bible verses, and she was actually listening to a conversation another friend and I were having, very deep biblical conversation. And she was kind of like, just like listening. And then I was like, I'm sorry, we won't keep talking about this, and she's like, no, it's okay. But like over 20 years, I've seen this kind of transformation where she's like kind of a little bit more interested now because I've stayed on this path for 20 years. I've never wavered. I've always said, Jesus is my life. He is my identity. And I want him to be yours too, but I'm not going to push. I'm going to wait until the Lord speaks to you. And I just know in my heart that at some point in her life, there will be a moment and she'll know exactly who to call, because who has the as usual posture? That's me. And she's going to know I need to call Stacy because I have this question. Yeah. So it doesn't have to be complicated. People make it so complicated. Just love them. Show up with who you are. Never waver on your beliefs to make someone feel better. If they don't like it, if they're uncomfortable to be around that, that is their problem, not yours. Yeah. As long as you weren't constantly like, you need to do this, sign this piece of paper, or you can't come in here anymore. I mean, you
can't be a part of the cool kids club.
No.
Yeah.
So it falls into that, this is what the church is doing, and they're not walking the walk. They think by signing a piece of paper in a very confused world that's not going to do anything.
We also, I do want to say this. The church in 2023 does have a bad rap. A lot of people have walked away from the church. A lot of people have been hurt by the church, and a lot of people talk crap about the church. But I also want to say the church is one of the most beautiful depictions of who Jesus really is, because we are broken, all of us, and we're coming together. And we want to learn more. We want to be better. We want to build community. We want to know that there's other people that are struggling with their own stuff. We're struggling with our stuff, and we can pray for each other and encourage each other. So the design of the church is a beautiful thing, but you have to remember it can hurt you because we are imperfect. And so don't let 1 or 2 or 12 interactions with various different churches put this bad taste in your mouth to where you're like, I'm not going back to church. Because I think the reality is what Stacy and I talk about a lot with Joy Revival is cultivating community. And we would encourage you to find that community. We're trying to build this community that right now is a virtual community that there are some exciting things to come, my friends. But while these things, we want to be able to be in person doing some of these things with that community, the encouragement would be to find a community that ultimately, a church community that you align with, to where you feel like their statement of faith is something that you can get on board with. And whether you sign that piece of paper that says, I want to be a part of this church or not, but you are there showing up, interacting, attentively listening and trying to dive deeper into the word to understand, who is this God? I want to know more about this God, and knowing what it means to love others by following Jesus, and not what Joe Blow, the pastor of this mega church or whatever, wants you to sign a piece of paper that says, join the sexual revolution. So weird. Really weird.
So bizarre.
Masha and Sveti, not fans.
No. Instead, and what would be the better route of this is, let's talk about identity and what it is.
There it is.
not sexual revolution.
Blech.
No, that's gross.
Gross.
That's disgusting. So,
I don't
okay. Well, I think that is actually all that we have today. We wanted to just kind of touch on that because I know if anybody watches the news, like it's been all over the place. And just, taking this perspective from it and just stick with loving your neighbors, my friends, and everything will be just fine. Wash their feet. Remember? He did that.
Humbled himself.
Them was some dirty feet too, I guarantee.
Oh. Heavens.
I hate feet.
I have a funny story. I'll tell you after the podcast.
Okay.
Okay, friends.
Well, yep. Remember, through the good, the bad, and the dumpster fires,
we can still choose joy and roast marshmallows. Thanks for being here, friends. You have a good day. Now go be nice.
Don't join sexual revolution. Take you down the wrong street.
Don't get in that boat.
That's that boat to be in.